So, no doubt you've all seen Larry Elliott's, the Guardian's Economist's article that he wrote in the Guardian saying that, well, rejoining is just a pipe dream, that Brexit hasn't been a disaster. And in this video, we are going to respond to Larry Elliott's article because I think he leaves a lot of stuff out of that article. And I think that he should be challenged on why he has left a lot of stuff, first of all, out of that article. And let's start off with the name of the article. First of all, Brexit hasn't been a disaster. Well, okay, what's Larry Elliott's version of Brexit? Now, we have to go along with the Leave campaign, because they were the ones who won. They were the ones who dictated, this is what Brexit is. This is what it is. This is how we describe it. This is what we want Brexit to be. And yet, disaster? Absolutely. Absolutely. It has been a disaster by a lot of very measurable metrics, which we'll get into later, especially the economic ones that he mentions, and more importantly, the ones that he does not mention later on in the article. But rejoining, he calls it a pipe dream. So I have to generally ask him if he thinks rejoining is just a pipe dream when you can see the strength of the European movement now. And yes, I agree, it's not currently a main concern for political parties, but it is a growing voice that even they will not be able to ignore, especially going into the next parliament. I have said this before on this channel a number of times, that next parliament, we will be able to have proper conversations about Brexit. I don't think we're going to be getting that, certainly in this parliament, but next parliament, that's when we'll be able to have, I think, normal conversations where MPs will be able to stand up and say, hey, there's an elephant in the room. It's called Brexit. Maybe we should do something about it. And not only that, but I would challenge him on rejoining. Because rejoining what? Ultimately, while I think rejoining the EU as a full member is certainly a couple of years away, I think rejoining things like, as we've seen, Horizon, possibly. You've seen Erasmus Plus talked about rejoining. There is, of course, talks about the steps involved. Maybe we rejoin the customs union. Maybe we rejoin, the customs union and single market. What about rejoining those? And those are, I think, very achievable, because we've talked about Keir Starmer's stance before on this. The idea that he does alignment deals with the EU, does some sort of Swiss-style deals. The EU are not opposed to doing those types of deals. We've seen that from the Windsor framework. And to do a deal which would make it easier for, let's say, the big one recently, electric cars, to cross back and forth the channel, probably quite something the EU would probably like to do. So I could see us doing that and getting to a stage where, I've said before, Keir Starmer can just turn around and just go, this is Brexit. This is as best as it is ever going to be. Are you sure you still want this? Or maybe instead you'd like to rejoin the customs union, which would, of course, alleviate a lot of trouble at the border. And certainly, I think, make a lot of companies, especially medium and small companies in the UK, very, very happy if they announce that. Remember, most of the UK businesses, and certainly our business infrastructure, we've talked about this before, is made up of SMEs. That's medium to small enterprises. Something else I think Larry Elliott doesn't really mention in this article. But we're going to get on into some of the other things that he brings up in this article and sort of respond to them. So before we do get on to that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So let's go on to some of the things that Larry Elliott brought up. So his main argument, or at least his two main arguments, you see he's bringing up. First of all, the idea that the EU is a sinking ship. It's far right, anti-immigration, all these new immigration governments that are sort of popping up being, really anti this. You've got Geert Wilders, you've obviously got Giorgia Meloni, of course, in Italy. And then, of course, there are economic problems in the EU. No one doubts that. No one is ignoring that the EU does not have, economic problems. But the way that the EU is dealing with those economic problems, I would argue, is certainly far, far better than we are by ourselves. So, and not only that, you look at far-right governments. Well, okay, you've had Geert Wilders win in the Netherlands, which shocked a lot of people. You had a Dutch, I can't remember if he was like a journalist or a writer, also right recently in The Guardian. He said, the Dutch will find out just how bad it is to have a guy like this in charge, and there will be a lot of buyer's remorse. Bear in mind, we saw that with Donald Trump. Not only that, you want a good example of a country that keeps on electing different populists and it doesn't seem to work out. And eventually, I think Italy will catch on, because for quite a while now, Italy has gone through various different forms of populist governments again and again and again, with the new populist government saying, don't worry, we've come to save Italy from all its problems. We'll sort this out. And of course, inevitably, they completely fail in sorting out these problems. So another populist party comes up and says, don't worry, we'll be the one to solve all these problems. And it just has repeated now for a number of years. Eventually, I think even the Italians will get the point. Maybe these populists don't know what they're talking about. We've just had a big victory against populists in Poland. Why didn't Larry Elliott bring that up? I think that victory over there is a fantastic moment for all that. The other thing, of course, and I think the main thing Elliott does bring up in his arguments is the whole Remain predicted big economic collapses, all this and all that. Let's acknowledge this. I think it was a bad idea to go and say such extreme things, but we've never really openly said this would be a huge possibility. We've said that, the British economy would be bad, and it is, which I think is the glaring omission in your article, because you ignore the Office for Budget Responsibility, saying that Brexit is costing the UK 4% of our GDP. You've ignored, for example, the negative impacts, trade intensity, damage to importers, border costs, a big one for businesses. We've seen businesses stop trading completely, either to the UK or just stop trading with Europe completely, because of those border costs just are too much for them to handle. And I've covered this numerous times on my channel, of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, losing between 30 to 40% of their business. I think being the economics editor in The Guardian, probably something you might want to bring up. You know? And not only just that, the massive decrease we've had in foreign direct investment. Inflation higher than the rest of Europe. Now, he does go on to say, oh, but what about these investments by Nissan and Microsoft? And he talks up about how America is sort of leading the way in this, and it's leaving Europe behind. Elliott does not point out that Europe gathering pace on this significantly. They are look, what Europe may be bad compared to what America has done, but where we are, and you compare us in this, as we've described before, in this race to the green economies of the future, Rishi Sunak has shot us in the foot in this race. And Europe might be bad, but it is getting better, and it is pulling significantly ahead of us in those regards. So it's strange, and I think it should be brought up that you do ignore those emissions. Not only that, but there was a report out recently. I think it was the New European who also responded to your article, pointed out that French and German citizens are £8,000 better off than us. If Europe is a basket case economy, bear in mind, a lot of the things you say are very reminiscent, and I do agree with that article as well, are very, very reminiscent of the fact of someone who is a hard right Brexiteer. In fact, if I were to take your name off it and maybe slap like Daniel Hannan or Nigel Farage, whatever, pick your Brexiteer, Kate Hoey, it would not too sound dissimilar to the words that they are saying, if I'm honest. And then the other thing, of course, as we talked about, the rise of the far right in Europe. Yes, the far right have been rising not only just in Europe, but around the world. But what about here in the UK? What about the fact that we are looking at a Tory party that continues to double down even more and drive an even more hard right agenda with the Rwanda plan, and also trying to push for leaving the European Convention of Human Rights? Because I find that really worrying. The fact that we've got a Tory party that is genuinely considering trying to pull out of that. I think that's genuinely really worrying that we want to pull out of that. And of course, the other thing, coming back to something else, yeah, you really do sound like a Brexiteer when you say there are opportunities for Brexit that we haven't exploited yet. Such as, like honestly, I would challenge you, if you sincerely believe that there are these opportunities around Brexit that we haven't yet taken advantage of, do an article about them, please. Because we have been chastising the hard right of the Brexiteers for a long time when they've said, oh, there's these Brexit opportunities, and then we go, okay, what are these Brexit opportunities? And silence. The silence is deafening. So if you do genuinely believe that there are Brexit opportunities that we are not taking advantage of, I would challenge you to write an article explaining what these Brexit opportunities for the UK are now that we've Brexited and how we can take advantage of these. Because I'll tell you now, the Brexiteers have been, if there were genuine Brexit advantages, the Brexiteers would be screaming them from the rooftop. So, I challenge you, but of course, I doubt. I don't know if you really would maybe do that. Again, I doubt you'll ever see this video. But here's the thing. Ultimately, I think your article leaves a lot of very glaring omissions. As we've talked about, Office for Budget Responsibility. You don't acknowledge a lot of the negative facts that have come out in around trade, inflation, the fact that the added border costs. We've covered that numerous times on my channel. Numerous times. Businesses losing between 30 to 40% or just stopping trading with Europe entirely. That's pretty glaring omission, I have to say. So, rejoining, is it a pipe dream? No. Ultimately, I don't think it is at all. I think there is a huge chance we could generally go and rejoin the European Union. And of course, but as me and my other fellow Remainers, we talk about what does rejoining look like? What does the process of us rejoining? What does, maybe we join the customs union first and then with the single market and then we become, full members or, whatever. There's a ton of what rejoining itself looks like that we on this side talk about all the time, that I've talked about on this channel multiple times. So that's sort of my response to it. Overall, as I said, a pipe dream. No, I think it's more than possible. I think it's more than doable. I think that you've left out some really glaring economic numbers to say just how bad we are. The Office for Budget Responsibility being a primarily one that for some reason you do not mention in your article at all. I find that really weird. And ultimately, you worry about, well, the far right. Well, we've got, far right here. In fact, you go on to say that Brexit was like a release valve for the far right here, that they could now air their grievances on this. Well, what do you make of the Rwanda plan and the Tories pushing to leave the European Court of Human Rights? But anyway, we've gone on long enough for this. But yes, as always, let me know what you think down below. Did you read Larry Elliott's piece? Let me know what you thought down below. Let me know thought about what you thoughts that we brought up about this. Do you think there's anything else that we could sort of bring up about his piece? But as always, like I say, please do click on the like, the share button, and of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a rotation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.